What would you do if you came home and found your wife's wedding ring gone and a folded letter hidden in the back of her dresser drawer? Michael never thought he'd be the man asking himself that question. For most of his life, he believed in simple truths. Work hard. Provide. Love your family. And the rest will take care of itself. But on that late autumn evening, when the house was quiet and the light outside sank into amber shadows, he opened a drawer looking for nothing more than a pair of socks, and found the first crack in the life he thought was unbreakable. The drawer resisted at first, sticking as old wood often does. He tugged. The contents shifted, and something thin slid behind the lining. He reached down and pulled out a plain white envelope. His name, Michael, was written across the front in his wife's handwriting. It wasn't the neat grocery list script she used for notes on the fridge. This was shakier, almost deliberate, as though she had written the name slowly, carefully, with a hand that trembled. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at it. His pulse quickened. Why hide a letter in the back of a drawer? Why write his name as if it were a secret? He sat on the edge of the bed and broke the seal. Inside were only a few lines. "I'm sorry, you'll have to find out this way. Please forgive me. I never wanted it to end like this." Michael's hands tightened around the paper. His throat felt dry. End like this? End what? Their marriage, their family. He looked around the bedroom, searching for clues where none existed. The nightstand, the closet, the photos on the dresser, frozen smiles from vacations and anniversaries, suddenly looked staged, like evidence in a case where the verdict had already been decided. The first thought hit hard. Almost violently, she was leaving him. It explained everything his mind had ignored in the past weeks. The late nights at work, the way her phone lit up, and she'd silence it quickly. The moments when her eyes seemed far away, even as she sat across the dinner table. He could see the story forming. She had found someone else. She was planning her exit. And this letter was her coward's confession, hidden away for him to stumble across when she was gone. His stomach turned. Anger rose in his chest, sharp and hot. But right behind it came something heavier. Disbelief. He wanted to wake up. He wanted to crumple the letter, laugh, and toss it in the trash as if it were nothing. But he couldn't. Those words, "end like this," echoed in his head like a gavel striking wood. Michael folded the letter back into the envelope and slid it into his pocket. He told himself he would confront her when she walked through the door, demand an explanation. But as minutes stretched into an hour, and the sound of her car never came, his anger cooled into something colder. Curiosity, fear. What if he was wrong? What if the letter meant something else entirely? No, he decided. Not yet. He wouldn't give her the chance to spin a story, to paint him as paranoid. He would wait. He would watch. He would know the truth before he said a word. So instead of calling her, instead of demanding answers, Michael began to look at the house differently. He checked her side of the closet. Nothing unusual. Shoes in neat rows, sweaters folded. But when he knelt down, he noticed an empty spot where her small travel bag used to sit. He hadn't seen it in weeks. He searched her nightstand. Inside, beneath a paperback and an old lotion bottle, was a receipt from a cafe across town. 2 dinners. Wine for 2. A date, or just lunch with a friend. He couldn't know, but every detail seemed to tilt in the same direction. He replayed the past month in his head, scene by scene. The phone calls she stepped outside to answer. The excuses. It's just work. The way she slipped off her wedding ring when she cooked or washed dishes, but never before left it gone altogether. Michael walked into the bathroom. On the counter, her ring dish sat empty. The small band of gold that had been there every day for 15 years was nowhere to be found. That was the detail that broke him. A missing ring wasn't an accident. A missing ring was a choice. He gripped the sink and stared at his reflection. His face looked harder than he remembered. The lines deeper. The eyes sharper. A man betrayed. Or about to be. Questions spiraled. Who was he? How long had it been happening? Was she planning to leave tonight? Tomorrow? Had she already left in every way that mattered? Michael returned to the bedroom, sat back on the bed, and pressed the envelope flat against his knee. He read the lines again and again, searching for hidden meaning, for some way to twist the words into something innocent, but they only grew heavier. At last, he made a decision not to confront. Not yet. Instead, he would investigate, quietly. Methodically, he would watch her patterns, trace her movements, gather proof. He wouldn't storm into a fight blind. He would be certain, and when the time came, she wouldn't be able to deny it. As he tucked the letter into the back of his wallet, a strange calm settled over him. The shock had passed. The storm of anger had broken. Now came something sharper, colder. Resolve. Michael had built a life on trust. Tonight, that foundation cracked. But he would not collapse. He would follow the truth wherever it led, no matter how dark the path. And when he reached the end, there would be no more questions, only answers. The letter was only the beginning. In the days that followed, Michael noticed everything he once ignored. Things too small to matter before now sharpened into patterns he couldn't unsee. It began with the phone. His wife, Laura, had always been casual with her calls. Speaker on, phone tossed on the table. Conversations about groceries and carpools spilling into the air. But now, her phone stayed close to her body, pressed to her ear, voice lowered to a whisper. The timing was strange. 2 calls after midnight. Calls that ended the moment he stirred in bed. And when he asked, she brushed them off with one word: work. Michael wasn't a jealous man by nature. But the letter in his wallet turned those whispers into sirens. He watched her lips move, the way her eyes darted toward him. And each syllable he couldn't hear felt like a deliberate secret. Then there was the laptop. She used to leave it open on the kitchen counter, cluttered with recipes and social media. Now, the moment Michael walked into the room, she snapped it shut. Smile stretched too tight. He'd hear the faint click of windows closing, the faint pause before she lifted her head. And always the same excuse, just emails. He began to search the house, with quiet desperation. A receipt tucked into her jacket pocket caught his attention one evening. A high-end restaurant across town. 2 entree, wine for 2. Dated last Thursday. The night she said she stayed late at the office, Michael turned the slip over in his hand. Bela rising. He hadn't been there. He hadn't ordered wine. So who had? The little things stacked like bricks in his mind. The perfume he didn't recognize clinging to her scarf. The way she slipped into the shower as soon as she got home. The distracted look in her eyes when he spoke. Each clue pressed him closer to the answer. He dreaded. She wasn't just hiding something. She was hiding someone. At first, he tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was a colleague, a client, something harmless. But the seed of suspicion was planted, watered daily by every half smile and unexplained hour. Michael found himself timing her commutes. 10 minutes longer than usual. 15. Once. Nearly an hour late. With no explanation, but traffic. He watched her carefully. As though her body carried the truth, her mouth refused to speak. By the second week, doubt wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a storm cloud overhead. He stopped sleeping deeply. Ears pricked for the sound of her phone. He rose in the middle of the night, checked her purse, scrolled through her glove compartment, searching for anything. A receipt, a note, a clue. Each time, the evidence was circumstantial. Nothing solid, nothing he could throw on the table and demand answers for. But he didn't need proof to feel the weight of betrayal pressing against his chest. The letter in his wallet reminded him she was preparing to leave. Every whisper, every secret, every missing hour. Proof enough. Michael told himself he needed one undeniable moment, one glimpse that would silence every doubt, every possibility of innocence. So he followed her. It was a Thursday evening when she left the house in a hurry, saying she had to meet a client. She dressed carefully, too carefully for business. A black dress he hadn't seen in months, makeup heavier than usual, earrings that glittered when she caught the hallway light. Michael waited until she pulled out of the driveway before sliding into his own car. He kept 2 lengths behind, headlights off when he could, hands tight on the steering wheel. The streets blurred as adrenaline surged. Every red light, an eternity. Every turn, a test of patience. She drove across town, into the city, toward the district lined with restaurants and hotels. He followed as she turned down a narrow street and slowed before a glowing awning. The name of the hotel lit in gold across the facade. She pulled into the lot, parked, and stepped out. Michael's breath hitched as he watched her walk toward the entrance. And then he saw him, a man. Tall, broad, shouldered, waiting under the canopy. The two exchanged quick words. Michael couldn't hear them. But he didn't need to. He saw the ease in their bodies. The way they moved toward each other like gravity itself pulled them closer. They entered the lobby side by side. The man reached out. Casually, almost instinctively, his hand brushed against Laura's arm, just above the elbow. A light touch. Fleeting. But enough to set fire to Michael's chest. His pulse thundered. His jaw clenched. There it was. The contact. The intimacy. The unspoken truth made visible in a single gesture. For weeks, Michael had lived in uncertainty, suspended between doubt and denial. But in that instant, watching her lean toward another man beneath the hotel lights, the questions collapsed into one brutal certainty. She was not faithful. The image burned into him. Her arm. His hand. The hotel doors sliding open to swallow them both. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened, torn between storming inside and exposing the lie. Or waiting, watching, gathering the final proof. His body screamed for action, but his mind whispered restraint, because if he walked in now, she could deny it. She could twist the truth, call him paranoid, spin the story into something else. He'd seen it before, in friends' divorces, in bitter fights that ended with the man painted as unstable. No, he wouldn't give her that power. Michael sat in the car, blood pounding, staring at the lobby doors. Minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. He imagined them inside. Imagined laughter over wine. Imagined hands brushing again, lips meeting. A betrayal unfolding in soft shadows. Every second fed the fire. But he forced himself to wait. When at last he started the engine and pulled away, the decision was carved into him like stone. He would not confront her blind. He would not rage without proof. He would gather every fragment, every piece of evidence, until there was no escape, no excuse, no lie left standing. And then, when the time came, she would face the truth. Not twisted, not softened, but undeniable for now. Though, the image haunted him, her hand, his hand, the two of them disappearing together into a hotel that had no room for innocence. And with that image seared into his mind, Michael knew one thing for certain: the storm had only just begun. Michael couldn't stop seeing it. The brush of her arm against his. The sliding doors of the hotel closing like a sentence sealed. The longer he sat with that image, the more it burned. Curiosity gave way to fury, and fury to resolve. He needed the truth. Not another night of sleepless imagining. So he returned. Hours later, he walked into the hotel lobby, heart pounding. He scanned the bar, the lounge, the elevator alcoves. No sign of them. His chest tightened as he approached the front desk. Every step weighted with rage. He pictured her upstairs. Imagined betrayal unfolding behind a closed door. He demanded her room number. Voice sharp, eyes hard. Moments later, he was outside the suite door. His fist raised. He shoved it open without waiting for an answer. And then, silence. Not the scene he imagined. Not a table littered with half-empty wine glasses. Not the tangle of limbs he dreaded. Instead, his wife sat in a chair, pale, hands folded tightly in her lap. The man beside her was not a lover. He wore a white coat, a stethoscope around his neck, files stacked neatly on the table. A doctor. The fury in Michael's chest faltered. Confusion surged in its place. The man looked up calmly, as though expecting him. Michael's wife turned, her eyes wet, her lips trembling. She whispered his name. But the sound broke halfway through. The doctor began to speak. Words measured, clinical, heavy with meanings Michael struggled to grasp. Test results, treatment options, prognosis, illness. Michael's knees weakened. He staggered back a step, the anger draining from him like water through open fingers. This wasn't infidelity. This wasn't betrayal. This was something else entirely. His wife's hands shook as she reached for his. For weeks, she had hidden late night calls, hushed conversations, the secrecy that gnawed at him, not because of another man, but because of fear, because of sickness carving its way through her body. The letter, "I'm sorry you'll have to find out this way. Please forgive me." I never wanted it to end like this. It wasn't a confession of adultery. It was a confession of mortality. Michael's chest heaved as guilt crushed him. Every suspicion, every dark thought, every night spent believing she betrayed him. It all turned against him. Sharp as glass. She hadn't been planning to leave for someone else. She had been preparing him for a future without her. Relief swept through him. But it wasn't clean. It carried shame. Sorrow. The bitter taste of mistrust. He squeezed her hand, forcing his voice steady, forcing strength he didn't feel. He told himself he should be grateful. That what he thought he'd lost wasn't gone. Not love. Not loyalty. But the cracks inside him remained, because even as he sat beside her, even as the doctor explained treatment schedules and medical terms that blurred together in a fog, a single thought kept circling. If she trusted him, why hide it? Why seal the truth in letters and secret meetings? Why let him drown in suspicion instead of standing by him, shoulder to shoulder? As they once promised, the questions festered, sharper with every breath. Yes. He was relieved she wasn't betraying him with another man. Yes. He felt guilt for doubting her, but trust, once broken, does not mend cleanly. Michael pressed the folded envelope in his pocket. The first letter, the words that started it all. It no longer meant what he thought, but it still meant something. A wall of silence between them, a choice she made alone. The doctor's voice droned on, but Michael barely heard. His eyes locked on his wife's, searching for the woman he once believed he knew completely. She smiled faintly, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her, and in that fragile smile, Michael realized something chilling. A lie is still a lie. Even when born from love. If she trusted him, why hide it at all? Michael thought the worst was behind him. The hotel, the man in the white coat, the diagnosis. It all reshaped his world. For days, guilt shadowed every breath. He treated his wife more gently, spoke softer, lingered at her side longer. He told himself it was enough, that the letter in his wallet was no longer a blade, but a reminder of how precious time was. But doubt has a way of clinging, even when the storm has passed. One quiet evening, while Laura rested in bed, Michael returned to the bedroom drawer. He told himself he was only straightening it, only tidying, yet his fingers searched deeper, pulling aside folded scarves and forgotten notebooks. And then he felt it again. That same resistance. Paper pressed where paper shouldn't be. He pried it loose. Another envelope. This one wasn't crisp and white like the first. It was older, yellowed at the edges. The paper soft from years of hiding. The ink across the front had faded, but the letters were still clear enough to stop him cold. D. Not his name. Not Michael. Just a single letter, written in the same hand he knew so well. His breath hitched. He sat on the edge of the bed, heart hammering. His thumb hesitated at the seal, as though breaking it would release something he could never cage again. But he opened it. Inside were only a few lines, raw and unpolished, written with the urgency of someone who could no longer keep the words inside. I never stopped loving you. He can never know. Michael froze. The world tilted beneath him. This wasn't about illness. This wasn't about fear of leaving him behind. This was something older, something deeper. A confession meant for someone else. His chest tightened, air catching in his throat. He read the words again, hoping they might rearrange themselves into something less damning. They didn't. The meaning was clear. His wife had loved someone else. Maybe still loved them, and she had hidden it. Not for weeks or months, but for years. Michael's mind spiraled. Who was Dee? A friend, a colleague, someone from her past. He searched his memory, digging back through the years, replaying every unexplained tear, every late, a night walk she took alone, every distant look that crossed her face when she thought he wasn't watching. He remembered the anniversary dinner where she excused herself to the restroom, only to return with eyes red, as though she'd been crying. The morning she stood at the window for nearly an hour, staring at nothing, claiming later she'd just been lost in thought. The old shoebox of photographs she threw away suddenly, refusing to explain why. Moments that never fit, pieces he never tried to assemble. Until now, the cracks in their marriage, once small enough to overlook, began to widen in his mind. He had chalked them up to stress, to aging, to life's natural weight. But what if they weren't? What if they were the shadows of another love? One that never truly left her. Michael gripped the letter until the paper bent in his fist. Anger flared, hot and unrelenting. But beneath it lay something colder: humiliation. All those years he thought he was enough. All those moments he believed in the story they'd built together. And hidden in a drawer, yellowed with age, was proof that maybe he was just the second choice, the safe choice. He pressed the letter flat on his knee, staring at the words until they blurred. I never stopped loving you. He can never know. Him. Michael. The letter wasn't just about love. It was about secrecy, about a deliberate decision to keep him blind. He rose, paced the room, mind racing. Who was Dee, who had owned her heart so completely that, even after marriage, after children, after years together, she wrote those words: a high school sweetheart, a college flame, a coworker, a neighbor. The possibilities stretched into every corner of his life, each one darker than the last. And then another thought pierced through. What if Dee wasn't past tense at all? What if Dee was still in her life? Quiet, hidden, waiting. Michael's stomach churned. He replayed the doctor's office in his mind, the hotel lobby, the relief that had washed over him, relief that she wasn't betraying him physically. But love isn't only physical. Loyalty isn't measured in flesh alone. If her heart belonged to someone else, what did that make him? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. He tucked the letter back into the drawer, careful to hide it exactly as he found it. He didn't want her to know he knew. Not yet, because once again, Michael wasn't sure what he was up against. He had thought the first letter was about betrayal. It was about illness. He had thought the hotel meeting was an affair. It was a doctor. Now, a second letter suggested something far worse: a betrayal of the soul, not the body. And so the doubts returned. Sharper than before, Michael lay awake that night beside her, listening to her breathing. Each rise and fall of her chest reminded him of the sickness that shadowed her. But his mind wouldn't rest. It gnawed at the edges of memory. Searching for a man whose name began with D, he thought of Daniel, his estranged brother. Could it be? No, that was too cruel, too impossible. Yet the thought refused to fade. He thought of David, an old family friend who drifted away years ago. Of Darren, a colleague she once mentioned with a smile. Of dozens of possibilities, each one a dagger waiting to strike. And through it all, the letter's words echoed. He can never know. But now he did know, and he couldn't unknow it. The sickness was real. Yes, but so was this. Two truths living side by side. One visible, the other buried. Michael's jaw tightened. He knew what had to come next. He would not rest until he uncovered the identity of Dee. He would follow the trail, however faint. He would dig into the past she tried to bury. He would tear down every wall she built until he stood face to face with the truth. Because if she thought he would remain blind, she was wrong. Michael sets out to uncover who Dee really is. Michael's search began quietly. A question here, a memory there. Threads he pulled at until they began to unravel. He went through old photographs tucked in boxes, names scrawled on the backs, gatherings from years past. He asked questions without letting on why, piecing together fragments of her history with careful patience. The letter burned in his mind. D. A single initial that carried more weight than whole paragraphs ever could. And then, one evening, the truth came. An old neighbor remembered a story. A time before Michael and Laura married. A time when she was seen often in the company of another man. Dark hair, sharp smile. His name spoken softly: Daniel. Michael's chest tightened. Daniel, his brother, estranged for years, driven apart by old wounds too bitter to heal. He hadn't spoken the name in so long that hearing it again felt like an echo from another life. But now, the pieces fell into place with cruel precision. D. I never stopped loving you. He can never know. The words no longer floated in mystery. They landed like stones. His wife had loved his brother. Perhaps still did. Michael staggered under the weight of it. Every suspicion he thought buried beneath the truth of her illness rose again, sharper and crueler. The phone calls, the closed laptop, the secrecy. He had told himself it was the sickness. But what if that was only a mask? What if behind the doctor, Behind the tests lay a deeper betrayal, one of the heart, not the body. The image of her with Daniel took shape in his mind, uninvited and relentless. Her laughter in another man's arms, her whispers meant for someone else, her tears not for pain or fear, but for love she could not speak aloud. The shame he felt for doubting her before dissolved into fury. He had forgiven himself for suspicion when he learned of her illness. But now, suspicion looked less like paranoia and more like clarity. It explained her distance, the moments of absence, the shadows in her eyes when she thought no one noticed. She had been living with two truths, one with him, and one hidden in a drawer under a single initial. The betrayal cut deeper than any affair of the flesh. It was the betrayal of knowing that perhaps her heart never belonged fully to him, that their life together, their vows, their family, might have been built on the ashes of something she never let go. Michael could no longer hold it inside. That night, as she sat at the table, he laid the yellowed envelope in front of her. Her eyes widened before she even touched it. Her lips parted. A breath caught in her throat. She didn't deny it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Though she didn't need to. She knew the words by heart. The letter she had hidden away long ago, but never destroyed. Michael's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. He asked her the question that had haunted him for days. Who is Dee? Silence stretched. Her face crumpled. Tears welled, spilling faster than she could wipe them away. The truth was already written in her expression before a word left her mouth. Daniel. His own brother. The name shattered whatever illusions remained. Michael sat rigid, his chest a storm of rage and grief. All the years of silence between him and Daniel. All the distance. The broken family ties. The unanswered calls. Now he saw the shadow of why. His wife had loved his brother. Perhaps before him. Perhaps during him. Perhaps still. The illness was real. He had seen the doctor. Heard the diagnosis. But it was no longer the only truth. The greater wound was invisible, etched into the lines of her face as she sobbed across the table. Michael clenched his fists, every muscle taut with betrayal. The sickness might one day take her body, but it was this confession that hollowed her soul in front of him. The audience of his own life, the one inside his head, could no longer deny what it saw. The marriage was no longer only about love, tested by illness. It was about loyalty fractured by a past that had never died. Every suspicion, every doubt, every night he'd spent wondering. They came rushing back like a flood breaking through a dam, and as his wife broke down in tears, Michael realized something chilling. Illness explained the late night calls, but only love could explain the letters, and love, it seemed, was not his alone to claim. Michael confronts his wife, and she finally breaks down in tears. The room was heavy with silence. The letter lay between them like a blade, and Michael's eyes pressed her for truth she could no longer escape. At last, she spoke. Years ago, long before Michael, long before their vows, there had been Daniel, the name she had buried in old paper, the ghost she thought would never resurface. They had been young, reckless, swept in a tide of love that felt unshakable. But Daniel had disappeared. No note, no reason. Only absence. His sudden vanishing had torn her open, left her hollow. And then Michael had entered her life. Steady where Daniel had been wild. Kind where Daniel had been careless. He had offered her something different. Stability. Trust. A chance to build instead of burn. So she chose him. But she never confessed what came before. Never revealed that in the deepest corner of her heart. A name remained unspoken. The letter to Daniel, Michael now knew, had never been sent. It was written in the aftermath of grief. When hope still flickered that he might return, she hid it away. Never destroyed it. As though unable to sever that last thread of memory, Michael listened. Each word cutting both ways. On one hand, it explained the letter, the secrecy, the shadows he had sensed for years. On the other, it revealed that he had never been the first choice. She reached for him, tears streaking down her face. She swore it was the past. She swore she had chosen Michael. Not out of desperation. Not as a substitute. But as a deliberate step into a new life. Michael's chest ached with contradiction. Empathy pressed against rage. He saw her fragility. The illness draining her strength day by day. The courage it took to bear this secret at last. And yet, The wound inside him throbbed. 15 years of trust, now riddled with doubt. How many times had she thought of Daniel while lying beside him? How many anniversaries had she smiled with lips that still remembered another? How many quiet tears had not been for sorrow or pain, but for a love she had buried alive? The weight of it bent him inward. He wanted to believe her, to clutch her hand and accept the past as nothing more than a faded scar. But his heart pulsed with betrayal. A reminder that scars can ache even decades later. She swore again she loved him. Only him. She was his wife, his partner, the mother of his child, and her illness, this shadow growing inside her, was no lie. The doctor's words had been real. Her fear was real. Her time might be shorter than either of them dared admit. Michael's breath shook as he looked at her. Torn between two worlds, the love they had built and the ghost of the love that came before. The truth sat between them like a coin balanced on its edge, waiting to fall. She swore she loved him, but the illness was real, and time was running out. The days that followed were uneasy. Michael moved through the house like a stranger, haunted by her confession. She swore she chose him. She swore Daniel was the past, and yet the words of that hidden letter refused to fade. I never stopped loving you. He can never know. Michael tried to silence the doubts, tried to pour his energy into her care. He made her tea, sat beside her bed, adjusted the blankets when she shivered. But love offered no shield against suspicion. Every glance she cast downward, every pause before speaking, fed the storm inside him. And then the phone rang. It was late afternoon. Light slanting gold across the floor. Michael answered, expecting a nurse, perhaps a family friend. Instead, a voice he hadn't heard in over a decade filled his ear. Michael, it's me, Daniel. His brother, the one who had vanished, leaving wounds that never healed. Daniel's words came halting, uncertain. He asked for her, by name. His voice carried something Michael couldn't mistake. Longing. Guilt. The weight of unfinished business. Michael hung up without answering. His hand shook as he set the phone down, pulse racing like a drumbeat in his throat. Daniel was back, and he wanted her. Michael drove home in silence, dread thick in his chest. He opened the bedroom door with caution, half expecting to find her gone, but she was there, asleep, face pale against the pillow. On the dresser beside her lay another envelope, smaller this time, the edges smooth and recent. His name across the front. He picked it up slowly, every nerve alive with fear. He already knew what it was, the final truth, sealed in paper, waiting for him. His hands shook as he tore it open. The letter was brief, but every word cut deep. Michael, I chose you then. I choose you now. But if I'm gone when you read this, know the truth. Daniel is not just my past. He is your son's father. The air collapsed from his lungs. The words blurred, swam, burned. He read them again, desperate to find another meaning. But there was none. His son, the boy he had raised, the child whose first steps he had witnessed, whose laughter had filled their home, whose hand had clung to his on the walk to school. Not his by blood, not his in the way he always believed. Daniel's. Michael staggered backward, the letter clutched in his fist. The room tilted, the world unraveling in a single sentence. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage fractured. The vows, the years, the sacrifices, all reframed through the truth that had been hidden from him. He was not just betrayed as a husband, he was displaced as a father. Images rushed through his mind. His son's smile, his curious eyes, his quiet strength. He searched for Daniel's face in those features, for evidence that had always been there, unnoticed. Every memory now carried suspicion. Every milestone shadowed by the possibility that it was never his to claim. He wanted to rage. He wanted to tear the letter into pieces, to wake her and demand answers, to drag Daniel back into the darkness he'd disappeared into. But the fury twisted into something heavier, because love is not erased by bloodlines. Years of fatherhood do not vanish with ink on a page. His son was still his son, by bond, by memory, by the countless nights he had rocked him to sleep. Yet the foundation beneath it all was cracked, poisoned by a truth that had been kept from him for years. Michael sank into the chair beside the bed, the letter trembling in his hands. His wife stirred faintly, unaware of the storm erupting inches away. She had chosen him. She wrote. Chosen him then. Chosen him now. But her choice was built on silence, on omissions, on secrets buried until they could no longer stay hidden. Michael's chest ached with grief, not only for what he lost, but for what he thought he had. The illusion of certainty. The belief that love alone was enough. The letter in his wallet had begun this spiral. Vague words that planted suspicion. The letter in the drawer had deepened it. Confession to another man. And now this final note tore away the last illusion. It wasn't infidelity of the body. It wasn't only love for another. It was the blood of his own child. Tied to the brother who abandoned them all, Michael closed his eyes. Head heavy in his hands. He wasn't sure what came next. Forgiveness, rage, silence. The choice loomed before him, as uncertain as the days ahead, but one truth rang clear. His life was no longer what he thought it was. His marriage, his fatherhood, his family, all rewritten in one cruel sentence, and nothing would ever be the same again. Betrayal doesn't always wear the face of another lover. Sometimes it hides in silence, in the truths never spoken. Michael thought the letter in the drawer revealed the end of his marriage. In truth, it revealed the beginning of a life built on secrets. Secrets older than his vows, deeper than his suspicions, heavier than any lie he ever imagined. The sickness was real. The love she swore was real, but so was the silence. And silence, when it grows unchecked, becomes a shadow that devours everything it touches. Michael sat with three truths: the woman he loved, the brother he lost, the child he raised. And each truth carried its own fracture, its own weight. Forgive or walk away. The choice was his. And whatever path he took would remake him forever. Because in the end, it wasn't the illness that defined their story. It wasn't even the past. It was the letters, hidden and unsent, waiting like landmines for the moment they would explode, out here. In the silence of closed drawers and unsent letters. Truth doesn't whisper. It detonates. Men. If you were Michael, would you forgive? Or would you walk away? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.